Russia has resumed pumping gas via its biggest pipeline to Europe after a 10-day outage. It has allayed Europe's immediate fears about a lack of winter gas supply after Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that flows could be cut further or even stopped. Now, the Nord Stream 1 pipeline runs under the Baltic Sea to Germany. It had previously transported some 55 billion cubic meters of gas a year. Now, flows were cut to 40% of the pipeline's capacity in a dispute between Russia and the EU following its invasion of Ukraine. Now, they were then halted for maintenance last week. Flows are now back at that 40% capacity level. Let's get more on this story from Rosie Burchard. She is in Brussels. Rosie, what is the sense in Europe? Worry or relief? They're getting 40%, but that means that 60% still not flowing through.
Worry and relief, both at the same time, because 40% of the capacity is now flowing. Nord Stream 1 is back in action. That means the lights are not going to go off in Germany. But certainly, according to the head of Germany's Federal Energy Network Agency, the political uncertainty remains. Now, the European Union and Germany essentially accuse Russia of weaponizing its energy supplies or weaponizing that long-term dependence, which certainly EU countries have built up on Russia. They rely on Russia for energy supplies. Certainly before this war erupted in Ukraine, the EU got about 40% overall of its natural gas from Russia. There are major efforts underway to diversify. The European Union has signed deals to seek new suppliers, for example, in Azerbaijan, with Norway, with the United States, Israel and Egypt. But it's not enough to plug the gap. So the EU is now asking all countries to reduce their gas consumption by 15%. They say Russia is blackmailing them. But let's not forget the Russian energy giant Gazprom says that these disruptions to supplies have been down to practical issues, to contractual issues. So far, 12 EU countries, including Germany, have seen their supplies of Russian gas either partially or wholly disrupted. There are fears now about who might be next, which country might be next on that list. Russia saying it's not down to a political issue. The suspicion here in Brussels and other EU capitals is very much that this is politically motivated and that Russia is trying to convince EU countries to soften their sanctions that were imposed over Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Well, the two sides disagreeing this way, one blaming sanctions for reduced flow and the other blaming retaliation for the Western sanctions. Given that situation, how might this then play out in EU sanctions on Russia?
Well, just today, European Union ambassadors have agreed, given a formal green light for a new package of sanctions against Moscow. It's the 7th round of sanctions imposed over the war in Ukraine, although they're not calling it a 7th package. They say it's a maintenance and alignment package. They say it's really just about closing gaps. The most notable addition to that new round of sanctions is the effective ban of the imports of Russian gold. But let's not forget that Ukraine and some EU countries, including the Baltic states, wanted to see in the 7th round of EU sanctions a gas embargo. They wanted for European nations to take a proactive step and ban the imports of Russian gas. Now, of course, that has not happened. It's much too politically contentious to try and broker any sort of agreement among these 27 EU member states. And what we're seeing really is the opposite, is Germany waiting to see how much of that Russian gas will resume to flow. Big efforts here underway, regardless, to try and rid Europe of its long-term dependence on Russian gas supplies, but certainly some tricky political roads ahead. As the EU seeks to impose more sanctions, it becomes more and more unpopular in certain countries, with citizens really feeling the fallout of this war in Ukraine. Much more political divisions likely ahead, although EU officials really urging unity. They say if the EU sticks together, then it can weaken Russia's hand here.
Rosie, thank you for walking us through that sticky situation there. Rosie Burchard is live in Brussels.